So we bought a fourplex and we converted each unit into a short-term rental. And the thing just printed cash. It made a lot of sense. We automated 95% of the business. The thing just ran itself. And so from there, I had a light bulb moment, which was, what can I do to scale this? Like, this is so scalable, but if you cast a big enough vision and you go for a big enough asset and it cash flows well enough, then you can bring rock stars on, and those rock stars will carry the systems for you and scale that asset for you. I acquired $6.5 million worth of real estate within 2 years of diving in, and it was through using this method. And actually, about $6 million of that came all within the second year, because that's really when I applied this flywheel method.
Gideon Spencer joins me, and you can find him on Instagram. It is at Gideon Spencer under. I'm going to have that as a clickable link in the show notes, but I really appreciate your time here today, Gideon. And we're going to be kind of going down a new rabbit hole for me. You mentioned micro resorts. So this is awesome. I haven't been able to speak to anybody regarding this topic yet, so this should be fun.
I'm excited to dive in.
But I also want to call out, you started a new group. So if you're interested in hotels and micro resorts, where would they find that?
So they can shoot me a DM at my Instagram handle. We're not fully marketing it yet, so all of your listeners are getting the front row seats to all of this. But if they're interested, they can shoot me a DM, and more than happy to share what we're offering. But effectively, it is for anybody who is interested in buying their first or next boutique hotel or micro resort.
Well, let's start with your origin story here. Like, how did you find your way into this asset class?
Yeah, so I actually surprisingly just stumbled into it. My background is in tech. I've built about 30 tech products over a decade. And my wife and I were both from San Antonio, but neither of us lived there at the time. This was about 3 years ago. We wanted to buy a short-term rental that was in San Antonio so that we could stay there when we were in town for the holidays, visiting family. With my background in tech, I'm constantly thinking about economies of scale. So I said, okay, if I'm going to buy a short-term rental, I might as well fit as many doors under one roof as possible. So we bought a fourplex and we converted each unit into a short-term rental. And the thing just printed cash. It made a lot of sense. We automated 95% of the business. The thing just ran itself. And so from there, I had a light bulb moment, which was, what can I do to scale this? Like, this is so scalable. These systems are so scalable. It's so heavily automated. And during that time, my wife simultaneously got incredibly sick. So she began having brain fog, had a hard time stringing sentences together, was somewhat disoriented. And so we ended up taking her to the doctor, and all of her lab results came back negative. They said everything looks normal. We don't know what's going on. Her health continued to decline to the point where she could hardly string a sentence together. She was completely bedridden. We continued to take her to more doctors. I think we ended up taking her about 10 overall. All of them said, we don't know what's wrong with her. Everything comes back normal. Within that 4-month period, my mom got a form of liver cancer that only had a 20% survival rate. And my dad was rushed to the ER with heart failure, and they said he needs a new heart or he's going to die. And so within that 4-month period, 3 of the most important people in my life were effectively at death's door. And while I wouldn't ever want to go back to that moment, I was faced with some incredible questions and learnings that I wouldn't trade for the world. And one of those was the need to build and scale wealth automatically, like without me actively working towards it, because we all think about the average life expectancy and we all reverse engineer it to say, okay, how many days left do I have on this planet? But I was hit with the reality in that moment that none of those days are guaranteed. I knew that if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, my wife's quality of life would plummet because she was bedridden. She couldn't work. And so from there, I set out to scale my real estate portfolio, leveraging teams and systems in a way to where my wealth would grow without me. And so that was another major catalyst for pivoting to boutique hotels and seeing the opportunities to partner with people at scale so that we could take down these bigger assets and build wealth.
You got to let everybody know, how is your wife, or how did it
Yeah,
all work out in the end?
dude, by God's grace, literally miraculously, all 3 of them are fine now. So my wife, it turned out that it was a nervous system issue. So her nervous system became overreactive. And so it ended up shutting down a lot of her internal systems that didn't show up on blood panels because it's a nervous system thing. And then my mom made it out okay. My dad got the heart transplant. It was a wild time, man, a wild time. It's literally like statistically insane that they're all okay. But yeah, thankfully they are.
So during that time, you just kind of decided also to take the light effort of pivoting your career completely.
Yeah, essentially, it is a lot of work up front to take down a big asset, but I always communicate it as if it's a large pie that you're going for. Like a lot of investors are looking for smaller deals. And while that's fine, it's more difficult to scale and there's less equity and cash flow to bring rock stars on to help scale the systems for you. But if you cast a big enough vision and you go for a big enough asset and it cash flows well enough, then you can bring rock stars on and those rock stars will carry the systems for you and scale that asset for you.
Well, could you kind of go into the weeds a little bit? Like what have you been able to implement on the technology side to scale to the level that you did so that some of this is running on its own?
Yeah, so in terms of operationally, we have our systems dialed. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, a lot of the innovations came in the short-term rental space with like single Airbnbs before it came into hotels. And so now it's just now starting to come into hotels. We automated everything from booking to checking out. We have it automated to where when somebody books a unit, they automatically receive their check-in information via email, and then closer to their check-in date, they receive an additional email with closer check-in guidelines of like, this is where your room is located. This is your keypad. The keys to the doors are contactless entry. So you punch in a code and that code is automatically set and scheduled for the date of arrival, the date and time of the arrival for the guest. It also automatically schedules the cleaning crew. So the cleaners know when to clean what rooms. And so the full cycle is the guests will book, they'll receive their check-in information, they'll use their keypad to get into the room. Once they check out, their passcode to their room turns off and the cleaners turns on. The cleaners are in there, they clean, they come out, their passcode is turned off and the new guest passcode is turned on. So literally from A to Z, it's fully automated. We have zero contact with or engagement with. They're just in, they're out, the cleaners are in, they're out. We don't do anything. It's 100% automated. And then, of course, you have the 30% of guests that they ask for restaurant recommendations, or maybe they can't find the ironing board or what have you. And so we do have people in place to help support, answer those questions. But operationally, assuming everything goes fluid, it's actually closer to 100% automation.
So could we take a second to define like what you mean by boutique? Is the boutique element that you have at this level of automation, or is there some other amenities or something going on here to make it a boutique?
So a boutique hotel is anything typically under 50 units that is not tied to what is called a flag or a major brand like a Marriott. So it's a smaller hotel that has a unique branding and a differentiator experientially. So when you show up, it feels like a different brand. It feels like a one-off. You can almost think of it as like those restaurants that aren't tied to major chains. And when you go into the restaurant, it feels like a cool, unique experience. So that's what we're creating with boutique hotels.
Sure. That's it's interesting. Like, the first thing that comes to mind with when you say boutique, my mind automatically goes to those theme oriented places that, Star Wars and what
Yeah.
have you.
Yeah, and there's some that do that. Yeah, there are a lot of
Mhm.
boutique hotels that is their differentiator. It doesn't necessarily need to be something like that. Like our most recent purchase in Solvang, California, it's beautiful property. It's in Central California wine country. We have the largest outdoor space of any other hotel in the market. And not only that, but we have two. We have a massive front garden and a massive back garden. So we'll be able to host outdoor weddings in a way that other venues can't. And so that's our core differentiator. So it's like an elevated Scandinavian vibe, mid-century modern design and furniture with that differentiator of outdoor events. And so that's our unique offering.
So have you already started planning?
That's a really good question. One of these days, maybe we'll hire one of those new Tesla robots that can show people the grounds. Unfortunately, the weddings will be more difficult to automate, but yeah, in terms of check in, check out, we're getting really close.
You mentioned that you're still having to hire people, and there's the aspect of scaling there. Outside of the technology and scaling your business, is there anything else from the tech industry that you brought to your business now with these boutique hotels?
So, in terms of getting in the space, number one, having a cross functional team, which is you partner with people that compensate for your weaknesses. So, if you're a great designer, don't partner with another great designer. Find a partner that makes sense for that specific property that you're going for. So, if there's a heavy renovation needed and you're a great designer, then partner with a great general contractor. The other is what's called split testing or A/B testing. And this is also really popular in the marketing space, but it actually originated in software, which is when you are like basically everything is an experiment. So when we were looking for deals talking to brokers, we would A/B test where we said, okay, when I talk to this type of broker, I get better deal flow than when I talk to that type of broker. Every week, my partners and I would get together and we would say, okay, what worked and what didn't work? And then we would lean more heavily into what did work and we would cut out what did not work. And so through this, we were able to really rapidly iterate over into what are the details of our buy box for the boutique hotel that we're going for? What gives us the best deal flow? And then even beyond that, now operationally, we say like, okay, let's try two different avenues when we operate this way versus that way. What gives us the best results, et cetera. So we've really boiled it down to a science in terms of testing out all the variables, leaning heavily into what works, avoiding what does not work. And then that's been what has enabled us to make rapid iterations in terms of how we operate so that we can take down these deals as quickly as possible.
It sounds like speed is important to you when acquiring these type of assets. Could you talk a little bit about how you select the properties, where you're finding them, and how quickly you might be reacting once you uncover something?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'll break it down in a couple places. So number one, you asked about where we're buying properties. So we're buying properties in regional travel markets, which are effectively secondary or smaller markets that have strong tourism that are within an hour and a half of a major metro. So a perfect example is Solvang, California. It's a kitschy little Danish town in central California wine country that is an hour and a half away from LA and it's 45 minutes away from Santa Barbara. And the reason we select markets like that is because we find that during economic hard times, people don't stop traveling. They just change their travel habits. Rather than flying out to Europe for a week, they'll drive down to Central California wine country for the weekend. And so what we saw over the last year with the economy softening is we saw a decrease in travel spend by about 10% nationwide, but in Solvang, we saw an increase by about 5%. And so that helps us create what's called asymmetric returns. An asymmetric return is any investment where you reduce the downside risk while increasing that upside return. If you make enough investments with those asymmetric returns, it dramatically increases your odds of increasing your return. So the market that we selected, that's a great area where we are thoughtful to create that asymmetric return where we say in good times we do well, in bad times we do better. So that's where we look. In terms of the types of deals that we go for,
Yeah.
in terms of what we go for, we look for deals that are about 10 to 50 units in the $2 to $10 million price range. And we like tired assets that we can add value to. We especially like assets that we can add a lot of operational value to and a moderate amount of capital expenditures to. So we want something that cash flows from day one and we can immediately add operational improvements. And then we can plan to do some renovations that are going to be low risk. So we don't want to be building brand new structures or tearing down half of the structures and rebuilding them or anything like that, because that adds a lot of risk that we don't necessarily need. So perfect example for our hotel is the one that we bought last year, it had all static pricing, which basically means every room costs the same amount, weekend or weekday, busy season, slow season. And that is incredibly costly because in the busy season, you're underpriced, and in the slow season, you're overpriced. So nobody wants to book. And so literally by paying somebody $20 an hour to spend one day correcting those prices, we added probably about $250,000 in enterprise value to that hotel literally from paying somebody $250 to spend the day just updating the pricing. So those are the value add opportunities that we're looking for right out the gate, where we say day one it cash flows, day two it cash flows even better.
Well, how large is your portfolio at this point?
So right now it's across 3 different properties that we own across 30 units. And then on the investment side, invested across 7 hotels.
Okay. I completely get it. If people are not going to be getting, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg on this conversation with Gideon. So again, take him up on his offer. Find him on Instagram. It is Gideon Spencer hit him up with a DM and see if you can get part of that community where you can get a little bit more detail and maybe a little coaching or mentorship there. If you found some value in what we're talking about so far, hey, do us a quick favor. Share this with one of your investor friends. It's the only way this show grows. Are you typically buying these properties from mom and pops? Like, is that still a thing? Or are you converting some of these banner hotels that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, so mom and pops are where we see the biggest opportunity. We're not exclusively targeting mom and pops, but right now we're currently stabilizing our portfolio. About 70% of the opportunities that we came across were either from baby boomers that were retiring or individuals who had recently inherited a property from a baby boomer, and they're not in hospitality, so they're just trying to get rid of it for whatever they can. So that's where we are seeing the biggest opportunities. There are 10,000 baby boomers that are retiring every single day, and they own 25% of small businesses, boutique hotels included. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in this space that I speculate will only last 5 to 7 more years before it's much more saturated. And a big reason why we're seeing that this wave coming is not only because of the silver tsunami, as they call it, with the baby boomers retiring, but also because of the regulations that are coming down on Airbnbs. So you have individuals with really large Airbnb portfolios, and the regulations put them at risk. And so they're interested in transferring that capital into a tangential asset class that is more secure, which is boutique hotels. In addition to that, even the people with large real estate portfolios or large short-term rental portfolios that are not at risk, they're like boutique hotels are their next step up in terms of investing and really scaling what their portfolio looks like. So we're also seeing a lot of attention from them as well.
Hmm. So I'd like to talk a little bit about you building a team, because you mentioned that a big part of your goal is to automate and be as hands off when it comes to the asset as possible. Is there anything in particular that you do in selecting the right people for the right role?
Yeah, so it depends on the role, but what I would say is any really high leverage role, you want to interview and engage with at a minimum 6 people. So, for example, when we were looking at our landscapers for both design and development, we interviewed about 6 people each. So, we interviewed about 6 designers and we interviewed about 6 contractors who would actually be implementing it. The lower risk items, we would interview anywhere from 2 to 3 people. So, smaller things like if we need to get a plumber out there to do some smaller maintenance, half of the units did not have hot water. Of the half of those units, the previous owner was having to refund their stays because, of course, they wouldn't like that they didn't have hot water. They didn't like showering there, and so they would get a refund. So the property was losing about $43,000 per year in net operating income because it didn't have hot water in half the units. We paid a plumber $300 to go out and swap one valve, and that added 43 grand to our bottom line. And because the property ran at a 7.5% cap rate, we added over $600,000 in enterprise value to that asset alone, literally just by paying a plumber $300. So smaller things like that, of course, you can get by with, just chatting to a couple people. But overall, I would say for the really high leverage, important roles, you want to make sure you're chatting with at least 6 people. And if you're looking for a partner to actually go in and have equity in the deal, a general partner that you're taking down a deal with, I highly recommend that everybody experiments working with those individuals over a longer period of time. So my partners and I, that specific deal is we all committed to working with each other for about a month. so we could see what it looked like. So we were looking at deals together. We were touching base frequently, analyzing the deals, deciding what the strategy would look like, deciding what our goals, our personal goals were with the deal. And so we actually worked together for that longer period. And then at the end of the month, we really enjoyed working with each other. So we decided to commit long term.
That's some good advice there. It's interesting how people don't actually take a breath. You either have that awkward conversation to kick things off, or you'll end up with an awkward conversation at the end.
Yeah. And it's like that expression, hire slowly and fire quickly. Like, you need to make sure if somebody is not working out, that you don't wait for it, because that ends up being incredibly costly. Incredibly costly. Like the people that you give feedback to and then they receive the feedback, but they don't change. And you want to keep giving them opportunities because they receive the feedback so well. But if they're not changing, then cutting that as quickly as possible is oftentimes vital to the business's success.
Do you leverage any sort of creative financing when in acquiring your properties?
We do. Yeah, 100%. So, perfect example, like I'll just keep using our most recent deal as the example. We did private money lending, seller financing, and subject to, and then of course we raised equity as well. So yeah, we definitely mixed it up. It was a pretty complicated capital stack for reasons that we could get into. We also bought the owner's duplex that she was living in. She was a 90-year-old lady who was just running the hotel to stay sharp and with it. And she lived in the duplex next door. And so buying her duplex was a requirement for the deal. And so that ended up creating a lot of problems for other investors who were just looking for hotels. But as my friend always says, the hairy deals are where the opportunities are. So we got in the weeds with it and we leveraged creative financing to end up buying the hotel with the duplex together. So we got our hands dirty with a handful of different methods.
Yeah. Have you ever worked with single family homes?
Not single family, no.
Yeah. The reason I ask is that it seems like when I've moved up on properties, whether it's multifamily and, well, in one case, a trailer park, we find that the people that have multifamilies, for example, they're more used to that concept. And it's
Yeah.
actually a little easier to pull it off than with a single family house.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, a lot of these things you can do in residential real estate, but because it is less common, people tend to be more hesitant towards it, which is a shame because it creates so many opportunities where people don't have to bring as much capital to the table. I have somebody in my community who ended up purchasing a hotel and put zero of his own money in because he ended up getting 100% debt for it through creative financing. So it's really cool the opportunities that'll show up when you do get creative and you ask yourself, how can I make this deal work, rather than just, does the renovation cost justify it? Can I get a conventional loan for it, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. How are we going to get this to work?
that's it.
I don't think enough people ask themselves that.
Yeah.
So, could you talk a little bit about the current market conditions and what you might see on the horizon?
Yeah, so we are seeing a lot of opportunities open up. When we were looking last year, this was when interest rates were a lot higher. And so sellers didn't want to sell. Hotel owners did not want to sell because, of course, the higher the interest rates are, the lower the purchasing power of the buyers. And so buyers didn't want to spend as much as what the sellers were looking for. So we saw a lot of stagnation in the space. Now we're seeing, as the interest rates have dropped, we've seen a lot more properties break loose. So a lot more opportunities are opening up. And also a lot of baby boomers that wanted to retire last year, they didn't. They were just hanging on to the property because they wanted more for it. But now we're seeing not only the baby boomers that are retiring now, but the baby boomers that were ready to retire a year ago, but just muscled through it. So we are seeing more opportunities break open. We're also, over the next year or two, we're going to see a lot of properties come online that, because their debt needs to be serviced. So we're seeing a lot of individuals, and I mean, this is becoming more known in the office space, but we're going to see it across all of commercial real estate, in my opinion. And I'm willing to be wrong, but just seeing the type of debt that is due, and the interest rates that people got that debt at, we're going to see a lot more people selling, in my opinion. People who were not able to operate the properties the way that they were anticipating they would be able to when they purchased it 4 or 5 years ago.
So, I'm going to ask you what has been the most expensive lesson you've learned so far?
Oh man, the most expensive lesson that I have learned so far. I don't even know how to put a number on this. I've never put a number on this before. I would say 10, maybe like $100,000 lesson was basically we as we're so this property is in California. And so of course like permitting is a really big thing. And we ended up as we were going through the permitting process, there was one item that we missed on the permitting. And so once we shut down the hotel and we began renovations, we got tagged. And so basically we had to rectify our permitting. And the challenge with California is, well, there are a handful of challenges with that market, but effectively the way that this city council operates is you submit permits and then they give you feedback on what it looks like, and then you submit again and then they give you feedback, and this can go back and forth for a lengthy period of time. They don't just have a list of things that you work through. And so that ended up setting us back significantly. And I would say that that was an expensive lesson because you always want to anticipate worst case scenario, and then you can double that. So especially when it comes to permitting in a challenging market. So we're going to be totally fine. I mean, it ended up being totally good, and we're actually coming out the tail end of that lesson currently. But yeah, I would say that's the most expensive lesson learned.
Well, I think you've already kind of given us the big highlight. I don't know if you can beat spending $300 and seeing such a huge return, but I was going to ask you what has been the biggest thing you've done, like for the smallest cost. And
Yeah. So I can list a couple things. Yeah. So it would be that water valve at about $600,000 for a $300 investment. You don't see that in many places. It's
no,
much more common in commercial real estate because in commercial real estate, the asset is valued based on the income it generates rather than just the
right.
comps. And so there's a lot more levers to pull. Another one, though, I'll throw on there is dynamic pricing. We paid somebody a few $100 to update dynamic pricing. We added probably about $200,000 value there. And then another one is bringing the property online. It was not on any OTAs, which are like the
Hmm.
Airbnbs, the VRBOs, Expedia. It wasn't on any of those. So people were just booking through finding it on Google. We paid somebody else $20 an hour over a couple days, got us on all those, and we probably added another $200,000 to $300,000 in enterprise value there. So yeah, I mean, there are opportunities all over the place. I don't know which of those to pick, but I would say those are probably the top three where we put a very small investment to make really massive returns.
You know, what's crazy about that is you've pointed out at least two instances where you've essentially hired somebody temporarily for minimum wage or a low hourly cost. How many people let that get in the way of not doing it? Like it strikes me that, you put it on your to-do list, you get around to it eventually, but if you would have just sucked it up and took care of it, I mean, the return on some of those low-hanging fruits can be astounding, and you're typically the bottleneck.
Yeah, 100%. One of the worst pieces of advice I've ever heard in my life is never pay someone to do something. You end up doing all of the lowest paying work that you can, and you're stuck there. But if you leverage other people to come in and increase your velocity, that increased velocity will make you more money. Money loves speed. Money loves speed, and wealth loves time. So if you want to make money, moving as quickly as possible, making quick decisions, hiring people that can generate those quick returns is the best way to do it.
You. Could
Mhm.
you talk a little bit about building that network, leveraging your network, and how to do that effectively?
Yeah, of course. So I would say there are three places that are great to meet people. Number one is meetups and Facebook groups. If you're just looking for other people who are in the space, those are great places to do it. Number two is social media. On social media, you can be very targeted with your outreach. Everybody I talk to knows I am not a fan of conventions personally. I think you show up and there are 1,000 people and you shake 1,000 hands and you maybe walk away with one like mediocre, shallow relationship that you have to continue building. I would much rather be targeted, reaching out to a specific person on social media and saying, hey, I'd love to have you on my podcast, like what you're doing. Like you and I have gotten to chat for the last 45 minutes and it's been fantastic. And now we've built a relationship and we're both able to add value to each other's lives. The third place is community. So it's a big reason why I'm starting a community. It's why it was what really impacted me. And communities are great because you can end up partnering and meeting with other people who are aggressively going towards a common goal. And it tends to have a lot more experts. For example, across our community, we have about $250 million worth of hotels that are assets under management, and then another 60 million in properties that are under management. And so joining a community like that, where you're regularly around these experts, I mean, you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. Saturating yourself with those people or in environments that those people are in and building those relationships is fantastic. So that's where to find people. In terms of how to build those relationships, I love leveraging what I call the mentor flywheel, which is effectively you find experts or people that you want to be your mentor, and you reach out to them and you conduct what's called active listening. So you don't tell them, oh, I'm willing to work for free. You don't ask them if you can pick their brain. You don't ask them how you can add value to them, because now you're giving them a job to do. Of course, there are 1,000 things you could help them with. When you ask them how you can add value to them, you're giving them a job to do where they have to learn about you to figure out where you fit in with what they're doing. And they don't want to spend their time like that. So you conduct active listening by asking them questions like, what are your goals? What are you working towards? What are your biggest challenges? From there, you determine how you can add value to them, and you add value for free without them even asking. So the way that I applied this getting into this space was I talked to a bunch of people who had incredible hotel portfolios, and I asked them, what are your goals? What are your challenges? And one of them provided the feedback that their goal was to scale their real estate portfolio, and their current bottleneck was deal flow. So I went out, I looked for deals, and I brought them deals, delivering value without them even asking. And I said, hey, what do you think of this deal? And then I conducted active listening again. And they told me, oh, I don't like this deal because it has a restaurant. So I said, cool, add no restaurant to my criteria. Went out, looked for more deals, brought them back, said, hey, what do you think about this deal? They said, oh, I don't like that because I only take deals that have more than a 20% internal rate of return. I said, sweet, added that. Minimum 20% internal rate of return. And I continued this feedback loop over and over. And what that did was, number one, it builds rapport with that expert. So now you're having a reason to talk to them regularly, and they're seeing your work ethic and how you think about everything. Number two is you're learning as you go because you're downloading how they think about these deals. And number three, you are able to align incentives in a way to where you eventually will bring them that deal that fits their criteria. And because they know, like, and trust you, they're more willing to dive in on it with you, which is how I ended up getting into this space. So I acquired $6.5 million worth of real estate within 2 years of diving in. And it was through using this method. And actually, about $6 million of that came all within the second year, because that's really when I applied this flywheel method. So that's what I would recommend everybody does, is like go to those locations to find mentors. Once you find somebody that you'd really like to get close to, you deliver value without them even asking, and you do it to the point where their success is your success.
I can't thank you enough for that. And I hope everybody stayed to the end of the show just to hear that piece, because it was exceptionally good. And what pains me is that I frequently have wholesalers contacting me all the time, taking quite a bit of time trying to understand my buy box, if you will, and then they never use it. They still send me anything and everything under the sun, and it's like we've never had the conversation.
Yep.
So I can't stress what you said enough. So not only listen to what Gideon said there, but please apply it. It goes a long way. One last question, Gideon. What do you and your team have planned here? You mentioned you're kind of stabilizing things right now, or are you looking at for your next acquisition?
Yeah, so we're currently stabilizing our portfolio, and we're looking to do acquisitions with members in our community. So right now, in terms of my active team, we are focused on the stabilization. I'm creating an ecosystem where people can leverage that mentor flywheel, like I was talking about, where we have people in our community that we are showing them how to buy hotels from A to Z. We're coaching them along the way, providing them the tools, resources, and support to get there. And they are generating a lot of that deal flow with us. So we're not in hard acquisition mode currently, but it will likely naturally happen simply because of this environment that we're creating.
Well, just to remind everybody, if you want to take advantage of what Gideon is offering there and become part of his group, find him on Instagram. It is Gideon Spencer Going to have that as a clickable link in the show notes. Before we jump into the rapid fire questions and end out this episode, is there anything we should have hit on there, Gideon?
No, I think you covered it well.
Well, if you're ready, we'll dive in here and close out this episode.
Let's do it.
What lie do real estate investors often tell themselves?
Well, that's a good one.
If you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Bring in experts earlier and build in public. Like whatever you're doing, post it on social media, tell the world, just get it out there.
Do you have a book recommendation?
Oh, book recommendation. I would say Atomic Habits. That's a big one for me. And another one that is lesser known is Psycho-Cybernetics. It's on reprogramming like your perspective on the world and how you view yourself, because once you view yourself as a winner, that is a prerequisite for becoming a winner.
Favorite movie and favorite album?
Oh, favorite movie, Enemy at the Gates. That hit me hard when I was younger. I don't know why. It was an impactful movie. Made me think a lot. And then what was the other one?
Album.
Oh, favorite album. I don't know albums super well, but I really enjoy. Shoot, I was a big fan of Mozart growing up, so I would throw that in there.
Okay.
And Vivaldi growing up.
Yeah, there's something about Vivaldi that just has something in my brain that I really like him too. And then finally, what single strategy or tool have you implemented that has had the biggest time-saving impact to you or your business?
Ooh, strategy or tool. I would say that's a really good question. What has the highest leverage? This isn't really like a strategy or tool necessarily, but hiring a VA early on to handle a lot of the miscellaneous tasks. That's a mistake I see a lot of entrepreneurs make, is they're doing a lot of the little things themselves, and it's very low cost and low risk and low commitment to hire a VA part-time to start picking up those tasks for you. You can hire them for an hour a week if you want to, just to handle the miscellaneous things, and then begin working towards buying your time back, which is actually another great book, Buy Your Time Back by Dan Martell. Yep.
Yeah. Was there ever a point in time where you had to take a second and convince yourself that was as much of an investment as an expense?
No, I always knew that it was an investment, but I think the short-sightedness that I had was I didn't realize the true cost of looking so short-term. I would say like, oh yeah, I can show VA how to do this, but I can also knock this out in 10 minutes. So I would just knock it out in 10 minutes. And I think like, oh, it'll take me 10 minutes to train a VA on how to do this, so I might as well just do it myself. And that frame of thinking is very short-sighted and has a tremendously high long-term cost. That's the hurdle that I had to get over, is by saying like, okay, I'm willing to invest the time training a VA up front so that I can buy more time back over the long term, which dramatically accelerated my growth because I was able to invest my time in those higher return tasks.
Well, Gideon, I really appreciate your time. It's been a great conversation. Again, Gideon Spencer. You can find him on Instagram. Hit him up in the DMs to take advantage of that new network. Really appreciate it, Gideon. It's been great chatting with you and great to meet you.
Yeah, it's been awesome, Jack.